Hey, you guys, who wants to turn their oven on when it's like 100 degrees outside? Am I right? It is no fun turning your oven on and heating up your entire house. Say hello to my gluten-free, no-bake Oreo cheesecake. That's right, this entire cheesecake was made without touching the oven. Just a little refrigeration time, and you've got yourself one awesome cheesecake that no one will know is gluten-free, of course, but they also won't know that it was never baked. So let's get into it, and I'll show you how easy it is to make. We'll start by making the crust first, and in my food processor, I am putting 14.3 ounces, which is one package of gluten-free Oreos plus 4 cookies from another package. So you're going to need 2 whole packages of gluten-free Oreos for this. Can you use like a different brand? Absolutely you can. Just make sure that your whole total amount comes to 14.3 ounces or 405 grams. So I'm just pulsing this and making sure that it's completely in like a sandy texture. And I'm thinking I'm there now. Just knock some of this down. And now I've got a half a cup or 113 grams of butter that's been melted. And I'm going to turn my food processor onto low and stream in this butter. I'll get all of that in there first. And I'm going to let it go for just a few seconds longer. I'll stop it and I'll feel the crust, and it is still pretty crumbly and kind of sandy. What I'm looking for is a wet sand texture. So I'm going to process it for just a little bit longer. And actually, I look on the side here and you're going to see it come up from the bottom and kind of get wet all over it. You see that little, it's like a half an inch, and it keeps slowly creeping up on the bottom. That's when you see that it's starting to really come together. So just by processing it for just a little bit longer, you'll get some nice texture to that crust that you really want, because if you don't process it long enough, it's not going to stick together. And we need this to stick together because it's not going into the oven to be baked. So anything we can do on the front end will really help to eliminate that crumbly texture. So we're pouring this now into a 9-inch springform pan. Now this springform pan has really high sides to it. I think they're almost 4 inches in height. Now you can use a smaller one. These are kind of hard to find. I'll put a link for where I got this one. But if you'd like to use a smaller one, feel free to. You just might have a little filling left over, and there's nothing wrong with that. You could put it in a bowl and eat it. You can make little cheesecakes out of it if you want. If you want to save some of the Oreo cookies, you can put the Oreo cookie right in the bottom of a cupcake tin or a cupcake liner within the tin, and just put some of that filling on top, and you have mini cheesecakes. So do whatever you'd like with that extra filling. So I'm just crumbling up some of these big lumps that were in there, just so I have a uniform texture to start out. And now I'm using a glass and really pressing. Like I said, this isn't going in the oven, so we have to get it that really good firm texture that we're looking for, so it won't just crumble when we go to try to take a slice of it. Now I'm going around the edges and actually pressing into the edges of the pan as well. All right, that looks pretty good. It's not completely level. That's okay. So in the refrigerator, this goes for 30 minutes while we make the filling. So the first thing I'm going to do is whip some heavy cream. This is 2/3 a cup or 160 grams of heavy whipping cream that is cold, straight from the fridge. And I'm just going to whip this into stiff peaks. Okay, this looks pretty good. This is Stiff Peaks. I almost went over and made butter, but that's okay. We are close enough. So I'm going to use this same bowl and the same whisk. So I'm just transferring this whipped cream into a smaller bowl. Look at how cute this bowl is. My daughter gave me these, this set of like citrus bowls for Mother's Day, I think, and they are just adorable. Anyway, I'm going to get this into the fridge while I make the rest of the filling. This is going to be folded into the filling later. So now we have 4 blocks, which are 8 ounces apiece. So that's 904 grams of softened cream cheese. We'll start whisking this just to get it broken up. We want to do this by itself before we add anything to it, just to make sure there are no lumps. And this is a pretty good time to start streaming in our sugar. So I have a half a cup or 100 grams of granulated sugar. And I'm just going to stream that in. But I'm going to stop at this point so I can scrape the sides down, because that's a good practice to get into, especially if you can see stuff that are on the sides that's not getting in there. Just scrape it down real quick and let it get nice and mixed. All right, now I'm going to add a 1/4 cup or 76 grams of sweetened condensed milk. And what the sweetened condensed milk does is gives it that like caramelized, almost baked flavor to it. And of course it adds sweetness as well. Just a little bit. You're not going to need the whole can, so just use the rest of it for something else, or pour it over ice cream or something. There's plenty of uses for sweetened condensed milk. And that's well mixed through. So now I can add in the 1/3 cup or 80 grams of sour cream, and make sure your sour cream is at room temperature as well. That makes a big difference in how well it gets incorporated. And I'm just adding a pinch of salt here just to balance out all those sweet, creamy flavors. Okay, I have the rest of that one package of gluten-free Oreos here. So this is minus the 4 cookies that I took out for the crust. And I'm going to put the rest of this minus I'm going to hold out about 5 or so cookies for decoration. You don't have to. And I'm going to put the rest in a plastic baggie, a zip top baggie. And I'm just going to crush them. You can still use the food processor if you'd rather, but I don't want fine crumbs. I want like uneven, irregular crumbs with like bits and pieces that are larger and whatnot. So I'm going to just use this baggie, and I'm going to use my rolling pin and give it a good whack a couple of times. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm just going to set these aside for just a minute. My filling looks good. I did forget to put my vanilla in, so I'm going to do that right now. And I just got my heavy cream out of the fridge, my whipped cream. Don't forget that. It does make a huge difference. So I'm going to add most of these crushed up cookies, save a couple for sprinkling on the top, just for decoration. I'll get these well mixed through. Okay, now I'll add in the whipped cream and fold that through. I'll grab my chilled crust out of the fridge and I'll dump all of this filling right into there. And like I said, you're going to have leftover if you don't have a deep springform pan. Okay, smooth the top, and I'm actually going to go grab an offset spatula for this job. Yeah, this does a much, much better job. Make sure you smooth the top because, like I said, this isn't going to be baked. You want it to have that finished look to it. The hardest part of making this cheesecake is waiting until it sets up. So we have to wait for at least 6 hours, preferably overnight if you can. I actually have one that's already refrigerated, that's been refrigerated overnight. So we'll go to that one. I'll pull that one out, put this one in, and we'll unmold it. And this one was done in a 9-inch springform pan that doesn't have as deep of sides. So it definitely got all the way to the top, as you can see. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. I'm just taking a butter knife right now, something that's not really sharp, and going around the edges of the pan and kind of loosening it from the top before I unmold it from this thing. And then I just say a little prayer before I unmold it just to make sure it comes out all right. Okay, let's do this. The moment of truth. Awesome. It looks really good. I've got it on a pedestal, and now I'm just taking some extra whipped cream and making some rosettes, piping some rosettes on there. And remember those cookies I saved at the beginning? I cut those in half, and I'll just place those strategically in between some of these rosettes. This is totally optional. You can just leave it straight, no whipped cream on top. I like to embellish my stuff just slightly, but I'm not done yet. I've got those leftover crumbs, and I'm just going to sprinkle those all over the top as well. It cuts just like a regular cheesecake. Nobody is ever going to know that this was not baked. It's just slightly sweet, has loads of Oreo cookies throughout, gives that crunch. Perfect for summertime. Enjoy.